Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to embark on a deeply immersive journey to shatter pretty much everything you thought you knew about everyday life in ancient Egypt. We're going to step past the grand monuments and the political conquests to reconstruct the sensory, physical world of ordinary people. We'll examine exactly how they survived a harsh, unforgiving environment, not just through farming and architecture, but through an astonishing mastery of what we now call cosmetics.
So, let's start with a profound historical question. When you picture that iconic, heavy black eyeliner of the pharaohs, or the equally striking makeup worn by common workers, what do you see? Are we really just looking at a 5,000-year-old beauty trend? Our modern minds almost immediately categorize makeup as an act of vanity, right? A tool for aesthetics, or maybe a marker of status. But if we want to treat the past as a living civilization, we have to understand their world on their terms and face the specific environmental constraints they lived with every single day.
Here's where our modern bias really trips us up. We assume cosmetic vanity, yet this stands in stark contrast to the sun-drenched reality of the ancient desert. For the ancient Egyptians, these elaborate mixtures were actually highly advanced survival technologies. To live along the Nile meant facing blistering solar glare, relentless dry winds, and dangerous tropical pathogens. Cosmetics were quite literally the shield they wore to survive it all. They served as medicine, protective gear, and, as we'll see shortly, absolutely essential wages.
To truly understand their daily lives, we need to look at the physical tools right in their hands. Long before any of these protective pastes could be applied, they had to be meticulously manufactured. Going all the way back to the pre-dynastic period, everyday people used these dense, flat slabs made of siltstone. Sourced from the ancient quarries of the Wadi Hammamat, this hard mudstone provided the perfect, non-reactive surface. Imagine the daily sensory routine, using a smooth quartz pebble to forcefully grind down chunky minerals like green malachite and dark gray galena until they turned into a fine, workable dust.
That daily grinding was the foundation of an incredible medical defense system. The Egyptians didn't just crush natural rocks. They intentionally synthesized new lead chlorides, like lauryinite, using low-temperature chemical processes that took weeks to complete. When this specific makeup was applied around the eye, submicromolar lead ions were released right into the tear film. It is a brilliantly engineered reaction that acted as a localized antibiotic, protecting the wearer against the incredibly aggressive bacterial infections that were common in the tropical marshlands of the Nile during flood season.
The efficacy of this practice was just profound. Modern organic residue analysis, conducted on ancient makeup containers sitting in the Louvre Museum right now, has proven that these specific formulations boosted the human immune system's nitric oxide production by up to 240%. That is massive. This wasn't magic, it was pure empirical science. The Egyptians observed that people wearing these specific white precipitates in their kohl had much better eye health, so they purposefully manufactured it on an industrial scale to prevent blindness.
Actually, it is no wonder that their deep empirical understanding of the natural world birthed the very language of science we use today. The intentional production of these lead chlorides remains the first known example of a large-scale chemical process. The ancient Egyptian word kamej, which referred to the rich, fertile black earth of the Nile Valley, was passed down to the Greeks, then to the Arabs, and eventually coined our modern word for chemistry. Stepping further into the sensory world of their daily hygiene, we find that absolutely everyone used moisturizing oils and ointments. You had to, just to protect your skin from painfully cracking in the dry climate. But think about it, how do you stop delicate animal fats and botanical lipids from turning rancid in the extreme Egyptian heat? Well, their solution was material technology. They crafted highly functional containers out of calcite or Egyptian alabaster. These beautiful stone jars provided natural thermal insulation, perfectly preserving the medicinal and cosmetic ointments inside.
Now, this daily hygiene routine also reveals a rather stark socioeconomic divide. While everyone engaged in these practices, the ingredients told a clear story of class. Commoners and working families smelled of fresh, locally pressed lotus flowers and castor oil, which provided necessary hydration but a very short-lasting scent. The elite, however, radiated the bold, long-lasting aromas of expensive, imported resins and spices like myrrh, frankincense, and cinnamon. Out there, scent was a highly powerful, invisible marker of wealth and status.
For the elite and the priesthood, creating these fragrances was nothing less than a matter of divine order. We can actually read their exact methods carved right into the solid stone walls of the Edfu temple. Preparing a temple fragrance was literally treated as the resurrection of a god, demanding profound patience and ritual purity. The recipe demands 16 specific ingredients, including pine resin, camel grass, and mint, representing the 16 pieces of the murdered god Osiris, and it requires exactly 12 days to prepare, perfectly mirroring the 12 days his wife Isis spent scouring the earth to find his pieces and rebuild him.
The demand for these spiritual and medicinal scents was so absolute that it drove massive geopolitical trade networks across thousands of miles of unforgiving terrain. We are talking about camel caravans trekking nearly 1,500 miles to India and Southeast Asia just to secure cinnamon and cardamom. Queen Hatshepsut even dispatched a famous naval fleet to the land of Punt around 1470 BCE, famously importing live mercuries with their root balls totally intact. This cosmetic economy literally shaped foreign policy.
Deir el-Medina, the artisan village.
To really anchor these massive concepts, let's zoom in on a specific working-class neighborhood, the walled desert village of Deir el-Medina. Hidden in the desert hills near Luxor, these were the elite artisans who carved the royal tombs. Their life was defined by a truly grueling routine. Working in 8 days on schedule, they camped in stone huts near the worksite for over a week at a time. They spent their days carving solid rock deep underground by the flickering light of oil lamps, breathing in suffocating limestone dust. Only on days 9 and 10 could they return to their families for rest and local religious festivals. Because they lived in a barren, arid valley, one chosen specifically for its proximity to the secret royal tombs rather than its habitability, they were entirely dependent on the state. In this planned community of about 400 residents, there was no local water source and absolutely no farmland. Every single necessity, from their drinking water and grain to their dried fish and tools, had to be imported daily by state-run donkey caravans. Their wages were paid entirely in physical commodities and rations.
And this brings us to a major breaking point in history. In 1152 BCE, during the 29th regnal year of Pharaoh Ramses III, a systemic bureaucratic collapse completely crippled the supply lines. The donkey caravans just stopped coming. For over 2 months, the state failed to deliver the workers' monthly rations. Out there in the harsh reality of the desert, a delay in deliveries is not just a bureaucratic inconvenience, it is an immediate, terrifying threat to their survival.
The craftsmen didn't just sit back and accept their fate. Dropping their copper chisels and wooden mallets, they marched out of their village to the nearby mortuary temples and staged the very first recorded labor strike in human history. Their desperate, defiant shouts were recorded on limestone shards that somehow survive to this day. We have come here because of hunger and thirst. We have no clothing, oil, fish, or vegetables.
Notice carefully what they demanded there. Alongside food and water, they explicitly demanded oil. To these workers, cosmetic lipids and eye paints were not a luxury. They were a biological necessity to survive the brutal physical toll of their environment. Without oil, their skin would painfully crack and bleed in the dry heat. Without kohl, the blinding solar glare would make their exacting stonework completely impossible. These cosmetic items were non-negotiable labor rights.
As modern archaeology continues to peel back the layers of this civilization using advanced biochemical analysis, we realize that our understanding of their world is constantly evolving. For instance, recent tests on alabaster jars from tombs have revealed residues of highly concentrated opium resins. This proves that what we once viewed as mere artistic vanity items were actually highly functional pharmaceutical technologies, designed to safely store, preserve, and administer potent medicines.
The ancient Egyptians used their environment, their incredible grasp of empirical chemistry, and their vast trade networks to forge a civilization that survived for millennia. So, I want to leave you with this thought to take away from our explainer today. The next time you look in your bathroom cabinet at your moisturizers, eyeliners, and perfumes, ask yourself, how many of the items we use for vanity right now secretly carry the 5,000-year-old echoes of human survival?